Hi, and welcome everyone to Europe's Leadership Fair, the career event for future female leaders. We're so excited to be spending the next 3 hours together with you. My name is Mahdis. I'm the co-founder of the Female Factor, and I will be your host today live here in the Austria Press Agency in Vienna. And our lovely team will be together with you online on Hopin. I want to briefly talk about our intentions behind this event and why we decided to do a leadership career fair, as we call it. So some of you joining today are right now on a discovery journey. They're trying to understand whether a leadership role is the right fit for them. Some of you are looking for a new challenge, a new job opportunity, and others are just here curious to find out about leadership in business. And we want to cater to all of you, basically. And leadership can be an abstract concept sometimes, and it's tough to really have an overview of all the different skill sets that are needed in order to be a good leader. And that's why we want to give you really hands-on experiences today, real-life cases, insights from existing business leaders, and also the opportunity to work on some solutions together. So let's talk about the agenda for today. We will kick everything off with a panel discussion with 3 wonderful female leaders here with me today. And you can also ask your questions live in the Q&A section or just type it in the chat. I will then pick those questions up here on my tablet and then ask our wonderful speakers. Then we will have a short 10-minute break at 3. And you can, digest the learnings, grab some coffee, go to the bathroom, and then please be back on time at 3:10, because that's when the fun part starts, our so-called solution labs. What are the solution labs? So in the solution labs, we have business leaders from different companies hosting a session on a real challenge that they faced when they were a leader in their current or previous role, and you get to then work with them on a solution to tackle this leadership challenge. You can then share the insights together with the other participants, and you'll also get direct feedback from the leader. If you didn't have a chance to register for the solution labs beforehand, no worries at all. You can still join the session you're interested in. Please just make sure to be quick, because spots are limited. The companies that are hosting the solution labs, we have a really good mix. So you will find solution labs from Mondi, Meister, Atos, EY, Inio, Grundfos, Bindergröstvang, and Storebox. And for those of you looking for a new challenge, a new job opportunity, we also today have around, I think, 100 HR leaders joining. So you can directly get in touch with them in the networking area on Hopin. And you can also take a look at the hand-picked leadership job opportunities that we have in the booth section on Hopin. And don't forget, I need to mention this because our marketing team always wants us to mention this. Don't forget to share your learnings or wow effects that you had during the event or after the event with us on socials. Tag us on femalefactor.global, and the hashtag is leadershipfair. So, for us at the Female Factor, one key trait of leadership is good time management. So we will really end this event on time at 5 p.m. Central European Time, so that you can, go back into your life with new energy and new inspiration. And now, speaking of key traits of leadership, that happens to be the topic of our panel discussion now. And we have 3 incredible business leaders with us today, 3 incredible women. With me on the left-hand side here is Stef, Country Director of Visa in Austria. Hi, Stef.
Hi, Mahdis.
Next to her is Angeley, the Chief Marketing and Growth Officer of Latana, coming in from Berlin.
Nice to be here, Mahdis.
And then we have Uli, Head of Learning Strategy at RBI.
Happy to be here, thanks.
We're excited. So to get into, let's say, the mood and have an understanding of what role you currently have, can you share with us what your current leadership responsibility is? Who and what are you currently leading? Stef, do you want to start?
Shall I start? So first of all, thanks for having me, and hi to the audience as well, and hi to you, ladies. So yeah, my name is Stef. I'm with Visa and responsible for the whole Austrian market. That means end-to-end P&L responsibility for the Austrian market. I'm currently leading a team of 9 people, so we're 10 in total. Most of them sales, but also other functions such as marketing, business development, and product management.
Nice. And I heard that you're currently moving offices, but you still made it here, so I'm really thankful for that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. I asked my team to do it.
Okay, Angeley, what and who do you currently lead?
Really nice to be here, Mahdis. So, and to the audience as well. So I currently lead the entire commercial division of Latana, that's marketing and sales, also all the go-to-market. We're based in Berlin, but we do business globally. So every single market and making sure that our revenue and everybody knows our brand awareness and who we are.
Nice. Speaking of revenue and money, Uli, who and what do you manage currently or lead?
Yeah, I'm also excited to be here. Leadership is one of my passionate topics, right? And that's actually also what I do. I'm heading a team of about 17 people. In August, finally, we finished the recruitings after me joining 1.5 years ago. And what we are driving is actually the cultural transformation, the leadership transformation in RBI. So in a bank which becomes a financial service institution.
Nice. So I don't know, you probably also had these team offsites, but we recently had one with our team, and we talked about leadership principles that we want to live by, right, at the Female Factor. So we had traits like integrity, ownership, responsibility, empathy, and so on. What leadership principles do you live by? What do you see as good leadership?
I can start. So one of the things that I've worked on for myself, and also what I advise others to do, is to work on yourself and evolve as a person. There are so many different leadership books out there and different techniques, and every year somebody comes out, right, with a new way or a new plan. You can't try to emulate somebody else. You can use tidbits, but you have to be the best version of yourself. And the more that you evolve as a person, I find the better leader you become. And the more you understand yourself, the more you can understand others and see their point of view. So for me, that is absolutely the central tenet, because you can only, be a best version of yourself.
So you would say self-awareness, self-reflection is something.
Exactly, and it's amazing how many people do not do that. So I would say, and it gets more and more tense the higher up you go and the more people that you lead, because you run into people from every type of background. And what I've experienced is people look at situations through their own lens. And so trying to understand what that is and the context, and you can only do that by trying to understand yourself as well. So that would be my advice for that one.
I'm happy to continue. I'm fully with you. So we have the initiative called Conscious Leadership, which is all about raising the level of consciousness from which you lead. Maybe we come to that question a bit later, because we also do have developed leadership principles for us as a leadership team in people and organization innovation, so HR. I'm one of those HR leaders. And we have 5 of them. I will not call out all of them, maybe 2. The one is that I really struggle with is mind for conflict, which means we really want to have positive conflict.
Which is mindful conflict.
Mind for conflict.
Oh, mind for, okay.
Mind for conflict. It's about the positive conflict. So enter the discussion for a better solution, not for your ego, but actually driving things, which is tough because I'm a pleaser myself. So I like to be liked, I like to be nice to people. And I think what many of us have learned is having these tough discussions it's nothing we have learned. And it's something that I think is very difficult for many of us. But we are convinced it leads to better business results, actually. And my favorite is serve the purpose, goes a little bit into that direction, and serve indeed the double meaning of serving the first wave of change. So with that principle, we definitely want to reach that we live what we preach, and actually are also courageous in going first with the change that we would like to drive, which is sometimes really, really tough, right? Because you're alone if you serve the first wave of change. And that's something that needs courageous from all of us, and it needs practice as well.
I can completely relate to that. And within Visa, we do have our leadership principles as well. Obviously, it's like 6 of them, and I'm not going to call them out, all of them. However, I think it all narrows down to basically what you guys said, right? And I think leadership becomes more and more, orienting yourself on these principles, and less of living the org chart, basically, but more of being empathic, being authentic, speaking up, being a role model, right? Lead by example. That's one of the main leadership principles within Visa, because you can't expect anything of your team if you're not ready to give it or do it yourself, right? Go the extra mile and stuff like that. And to me personally, also the whole topic around diversity and inclusion is a very important one. And to me, it's very important that it's not only lip services, because every company currently seems to, put the flag up there. But I think you really need to live it. You need to breathe it. And to me, it's not only, hiring diverse people, but really including them, right? Embracing them and give them a voice in order to be really diverse within your discussions. Because I think, I'm convinced that way you will definitely lead to better results than in the past, right?
Absolutely. I'm totally with you on, not just having lip services, because a lot of organizations have defined some key leadership principles, but then when you really look inside, reality is sometimes different. And they say people join a company, but they quit a leader, right? Speaking about that, have you experienced any toxic leadership traits that you really do not want to have part of your team?
I can start something.
That was quick.
Yeah, I can start. So something I've even experienced, recently, and, Ule also, called it out, is you always want to be nice to people. And you always want to show empathy and kindness, and of course that's the ultimate right thing to do, but having those tough conversations, and I think what people don't understand is leadership always means that you empower people to have a disagreement. So the leader doesn't always have to be right. You have to have diversity of opinion and thought, and not just people. It's okay to be challenged, but also when you're on the other end, even if you get a no as an answer, that can still be good leadership, or if it's not the answer that you want to hear. So that conflict can absolutely be good. As a leader for ourselves, being able to weather that storm. And I think a lot of times things get thrown at you because you are in that leadership position, good and bad. And so in being able to weather that, not everybody is going to agree with you, not everybody is going to like the opinion, but it's opening up, that wave so that people can give that disagreement. It's important.
Fully agree, and I think there's still a way to, have a different opinion, but still be respectful, still be nice in a way, right? You don't have to be harsh or rude. We had that in our last discussion. And I think that's a balance we all probably have to learn, either giving feedback or even taking feedback as well. And this is a cultural thing, I guess, and it starts with the leaders, basically.
I love the model. It's called Radical Candor. It's also a book. I don't know if you've worked with that, but for me, it's challenge directly with care. So, and that's about the care, right? So I give feedback or I present something in a way that I present it that you can take it because you feel that I want to make you grow. That's for me essential. But I think you also asked about toxic leadership, right? Mm-hmm. Not in my current job, but I've experienced a lot of toxic leadership already. And for me, what is a no-go is ego. So okay, was it off? Super. So for me...
You were talking about toxic leadership traits.
Talking about toxic leadership, and for me, ego and Actually, always wanting to be self-right, that's a no-go for me. And I think we still have a lot of that. It's also, I think, something that comes from the way we got socialized in our school systems, generally in our systems, right? You get good marks when you're right and not when you listen to others and try to have constructive discussions. But that's, for me, a no-go.
How would you manage the encounter with, ego coming out within yourself as a leader or in your counterpart? How do you do that currently?
I hope it now works. It's, again, not green. Yes, it works, super. How do I see and recognize ego? I think it starts with how people speak. And coming, for instance, to an interview, if somebody only speaks about him or herself, achieving things alone, right, and not referring to the team, not referring to we, that's a first sign of, and also not being reflective. We were speaking about self-awareness, not sharing where things really didn't work out. And we all know those questions in interviews of were your mistakes or were you not so good in? Somebody who gives this very fluffy answers, I think that's a good sign of how reflective the person is.
What are the best parts of being a leader? What do you enjoy most?
One of the things that I've enjoyed most is seeing people come out of their shell. So I currently work with an individual, so hi if you're watching this. And at the beginning, she was very, very shy. And she was working with other colleagues who were much more open and forward in their communication, so she always felt in their shadow. And then working with her to see her come out of her shell. Now she's super top in the communication, within the company, and people are like, wow, where did she come from? And so for me, that's what gives me joy, helping people to understand and overcome either their fears or their anxieties. And I think, you can learn skills in business, but these are some of the life skills that I think will really help you, throughout your whole career.
I work with quite senior people, and what I love about it is I learn so much myself each and every day from these individuals, because every one of them is different. They don't need me to micromanage them or to tell them how to do their job, right? It's just more about guidance and giving direction. But it's amazing to see how different perspectives can be on one single topic, right? And I take away a lot of it from that.
I recently read an article in the Harvard Business Review, and it was looking at all the research around, leadership traits. And one of them that apparently supersedes all of the others is contagious positive energy. So if a person is able to motivate others and give them hope, even if, sorry, my language, the situation is super shitty, that apparently is successful leadership. Can you train that? Uli, I'm looking at you because you're head of learning strategy. Can you develop?
Yeah, and it's a lot about training in my department. I think you cannot train things if people don't want to develop in that direction, but that's a different discussion. I personally have my struggle with positive psychology, like only talking about optimism and positive things. I think it's important, but we are in a situation, we're still in a crisis as a company, right? There's unfortunately this terrible war not so far away, and we're really impacted by it. So I can speak now from 2.5-3 months of experience. And I think what is important to be authentic in that, right? And not always think that this positivity must be like 24/7, because it can't. We're all human beings. So also saying and admitting that you have a bad day is part of that. And if it's, I haven't read the article, but if it refers to that, right? To say, yes, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, but sometimes it's also black at your day. And it's good to admit that. That is for me part of that. And for me, that goes hand in hand with self-awareness, right? And also investing into your own resilience. So it's something you can learn, I would say.
I can say that I've actually struggled with this. So myself, coming from California in the United States, we're always labeled as super positive and super happy. And even at my current company, everybody's like, oh my gosh, you're happy all the time and you're constantly smiling. And when I got here to Europe, there was a sentiment, a cultural difference where people interpreted that as being fake or artificial. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I really do want to know, yes, how are you? I really do care, but people just, you know, it's just a culture clash and they weren't getting it. So for me, it was a big challenge to say, okay, in which situations, how do I speak to a certain person that they understand that I am being authentic given the cultural differences? I will always default to my positive self because I always, given a choice, I'll take positivity, but I have to understand as a leader, not everybody interprets that in the same way.
Absolutely, and you need to also understand your team members and see the differences, right? Because you want them to hear and understand you and really feel it, and everyone communicates differently, so I totally understand when you talk about the cultural differences there. When was the last time you doubted yourself as a leader, and how did you overcome that?
I can share that. I had my ups and downs in the last 1.5 years. My team members know, my colleagues also know as well. And there was for sure one big moment where I was doubting myself. What did I contribute to that situation was when one of my team members went on sick leave for quite some time. And I learned a lot out of that, about my own leadership. You were referring, you need to know your people. For me, it was tough to get to know my people. I was onboarding in the lockdown, so it took me 6 months until I have met my last team member in person. So we did a lot virtually, but it's not the same, right? You don't really feel the full person. So, and I'm a very empowering person. For me, autonomy is super important for myself. So I also thought it's important and the right way to lead the team. But I wasn't aware of that my team members were actually socialized in a different way. So they were more coming maybe from an autocratical, more hierarchical leadership style. So giving a lot of autonomy can be really overwhelming. And yes, and I think that was one part or one factor contributing to the sick leave of one of my team members. And it was tough, right? Because you doubt yourself a lot in that moment of, I wanted to do the best and what happened now. Being aware that there are always more things contributing to such an event, there is always this moment where you doubt yourself and question yourself if you did the things in the right way.
I can add to that. I mean, for me, I think it's all the time. Of course, there are key moments in your life, but it's really those situations. Did I make the right decision? Did I have the right discussion? Am I in the right career? You know, can I really do this? And so I think it's just every single day getting up and saying, yes, this is who I am. This is who I want to be in the future. Yes, you can do it. And I know it might sound very simple, but so many people struggle with that. And there's so many influences out there in the world. You can't do it. And as females, I think we can all relate. You can't do it. We're told you're not ready. Where sometimes men are given the opportunity just because. And so for this, it can create an influence of doubt around you where you're double guessing and triple guessing every single decision and every thought that you have, but just to have kind of not only the self-awareness, but just the belief in yourself, to move forward.
And I can say from experience that a community and network really helps. I mean, that's also the essence, what we love to provide as the female factor, because all of us have doubts here and there.
Just wanted to add on that, because I think what really helps is if you're surrounded by people that can give you feedback, like valid feedback, not trying to be nice or please you, but really, help you reflecting and getting back to yourself, right? And see, can you overcome these obstacles? And because I feel you, I have this every day myself, right? It starts with small things such as, I just had the discussion with my team, who is sitting where in the new office, right? And I thought, well, I mean, they're all grown up, they could choose themselves. And then one of the team members told me, no, I think they will need direction. And I was like, okay, maybe that was a mistake by myself again. And these are tiny, small things, right? But we learn as we go. And I think that's something very important as well. You have to be self-forgiving. We all make mistakes. We are all humans. And it's not the end of the world if you not did everything perfectly, because there's no one leadership way, as well as there's not one way to be parents, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Have you experienced any differences between men and women when it comes to leadership?
Who wants to start?
We have time.
Yes. One of the things, and it works both ways between men and women, I think traditionally people think that women are supposed to be very kind and caring and empathetic, and if a woman is strong, she's a bitch. She's too aggressive. She's too controlling. If a man then is empathetic and a man is very caring and kind, oh, he's weak. So we live in a society where we have this situation. I think as a woman, especially in business, and I would say hyper-growth companies, everybody talks about that in the technology community, if a woman comes across as strong and competent, oh, well, you know, she's too aggressive or whatever that means. But I've seen men literally pound their hands on the table, throw pens across the room and at people. Throw pens. And oh, they're so confident and they're taking control, right? So definitely there seems to be that double standard, which is really, really unfortunate. And then on the flip side, if a woman, I've seen in my own career, if a woman comes across as quiet and polite and considerate, oh, she's stupid, she's incompetent, she doesn't grasp the situation. So it's really tough, I would say.
But it's changing, isn't it?
Hopefully faster.
Good point.
Yeah, actually, you trigger a lot. There is a nice book. I'm also into books a lot. The title is very provocative, but it's called "Why Do So Many Incompetent Men Become Leaders?" I don't know if you've read it.
I've read that one, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research in it, and it's actually written by a man, right? So
A male professor, I believe, yeah.
So, and what you just referred to is one of the examples that he's presenting, that a man, it's enough if he's confident, versus a woman must be confident, competent, and caring to be rated as in the same way and seen in the same way. So yes, there are differences, and I think what we need to be careful about is that we're not striving for fitting. The more you climb up the career ladder, the more you try to fit to the context and to the culture that is there, right? Because it's still very male. And I think that's something we as women could contribute to that change. Is first, yes, we need brave women who are proud of being a woman and also proud of demonstrating that. And I think we also shouldn't be that judgmental to other women, right? Not men and neither women, right? And I think we do that too often, that we judge other women as well, and are the same way, sometimes even more critical than men are.
I mean, speaking of, you mentioned that book, and I've read it too, and it's a certain A-type personality that is charismatic, that gets the leadership role, although they might not have the competencies to do so, right? And Angeley, you also mentioned maybe someone being more introverted and then not being perceived as competent. How can we have a more diverse set of leaders, not just in terms of gender and cultural background, but also in terms of personalities? What do you look for in the next generation of leaders? How do you develop them?
What I'm looking at, no matter if it's a leader or a team member, is indeed, it's this growth mindset, right? How much are you willing to learn? How much are you also willing to self-reflect and invest into self-awareness? And also, how much are you willing to invest into relationships? I think that's very, very important. And are the crucial elements that we're looking into. And I was just indeed thinking about my own, and I did 7 recruitings, I think, for my own team in the last year, and nobody fitted all the requirements that were on the job ad, because that's not, I think, and I was doubting myself that here as well, of why am I still writing such job ads if I'm not looking at the things, right? But for me, it was so important that people demonstrate that they are adaptive, that they're willing to learn, that they are open to listen to others, and I think this is what we need to embrace much more.
I think it's very much about empowerment, right? And especially what you said, growth mindset is one of the things that's really, really important. And this doesn't come along automatically with a strong personality and a loud voice, but it's maybe it's behind. And these are the things you have to look at. And I think it starts with, is somebody able to listen actively? Is he or she empathic? How is even body language, how is someone reacting to you as your interview partner, and so on. So, yeah.
One last thing there. I'll say throughout my career, I've looked for people who are very adaptable and who are willing to try and willing to make an effort. And one of the things that I've learned in my career is I've seen literally teams of all-star people, the top of their field, and you put them together and they can't accomplish anything because they're fighting with each other. Who's the smartest? Who's the best? I'm winning, you're losing. And then you put together a team of people who said, okay, I'm gonna try it. And they put the egos down like we've talked about, and they're able to outperform and just also adapting to different situations. So that's one other thing that I look for.
And I think there's one comment that I would like to make. I think indeed you can educate on that as well, right? You can make personality tests and really work with that on a team and see how the different things play together. You can work on and educate on unconscious bias. All these elements, I think, contribute to that as well. So the more you know and the more you've learned that diversity and different strengths and personalities is a win, the more you're also willing to go in that direction, I think.
And I'm a big fan of mentoring, especially in diverse groups, right? So especially bringing those people together that are obviously not fitting because they feel responsible for each other. The mentor for the mentee and the other way around. This has worked in my team quite well. So I'm a big fan of this concept.
I can second that for sure in terms of mentoring experience. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's not sure yet if they want to pursue a leadership role? Who are standing there wondering, should I go more into the field of becoming an expert in my area, or should I pursue a leadership role? How can they find out?
Should I go first? I think there's more things. One thing is search for little opportunities where you can practice, right, and get a taste of that role. It's still that the leadership role is linked to more power. Power is also a term that is sometimes really seen as critical, but it is like that, right? There is this hierarchical power coming from a leadership managerial position. So, yes, there is certain things that you can try if you are more up in the hierarchy, but first start with small things, right? There could be a functional lead role that you take. There could be another role in a team that actually incorporates certain leadership aspects and search for those opportunities. And in parallel, speaking from my own experience, I invested a lot into drawing my vision board and who do I want to be? I think you mentioned it before, and what is really, really important to me. So for myself, but also for the context that I'm in. So what is it, what I'm searching for, and what is what I cannot stand? And if you're clear on that, suddenly the opportunities will arise, and you don't need to push for them. You will suddenly spot them. At least this is from my experience. And I would never, so I'm in a bank, right? You could really say that's maybe not the most inspiring, most innovative, sitting next to a hyper-tech company, right? That's what many youngsters and talents are striving for. But for me, it was really, really important to have impact and to create things and to contribute to something better. And I was writing that down, and I was suddenly this opportunity with RBI was here, and that's indeed the case, right? So I was testing it, and this is important to me. And then I was like having my hypotheses, and I tried to test them in every conversation that I had with RBI in my interviews. I said that and that is important to me. And then I was like really open and transparent. If this is not the case, I wouldn't have taken this position, for instance.
I would say I run across a lot of people that are really good at what they do, regardless of their function or field, but don't like people. And so,
fair point. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is the thing I would say to anybody. Anybody can be a leader if you want to do what it takes, but you have to actually like people. And you have to want to understand them, because this is the crust of what leadership is. And so you can take all the skill sets away, but if that's the fundamental, and it's not. So I think it's more of really reflect within yourself and think of maybe the most dramatic, worst personal situation you had with family, friends, and how you acted. If you can handle that, then you can go into leadership.
I've worked in many sales organizations, and they always tended to, promote those ones to leaders, which were the best sales guys, which does not have anything to do with being a good leader. So I've met lots of people who were striving for the power, but didn't really ask themselves, at least that was my impression, like, why do I want this, right? What do I want to achieve? What makes me a leader? And I think these are all questions you should go into a discussion with yourself if you're considering becoming a leader or becoming an expert. And if the only way up in your organization is becoming a leader, but you don't feel like you want to be a leader, then you should consider changing the organization you work for, so you can, continue your path with being an expert. You can be as successful as a leader.
Absolutely. Do you like power?
What I would say is, in my view, power is a responsibility. And I was actually just in the coffee session from Vienna Up this morning. I was talking to somebody, and what we find in business and in life, it's the people that strive for power the most are the ones that should not have it, and the ones that cannot wield it. And it's the ones that don't want the power, that don't usually strive for it, because that's not in their personality, but those are the people who would be in the best position to wield that power, because ultimately it is a responsibility. And I know the term is probably overused a lot, but leadership is a service. And if you're not willing to be of service to people, sure, people get to that leadership position, but then it goes all wrong, and we've seen, how that goes.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of examples of abusing power, let's say.
I had really my struggle with power. It took me a whole coaching education to accept that power is important, right? And there are different ways of power. So we need power, right? And I only came up with the German term. You need Macht to overcome Ohnmacht. That's a coaching term, right? And I'm sorry that I cannot translate it. Maybe you can assist me on that in a good way. But I'm very much working with social power. So I'm not working with the hierarchical power. I really have difficulties with that. I also think there's a certain power if you have a topic lead, for instance, if you're a topic lead. And I think we need to accept that this is part of the game, and it's needed from leaders and everybody of us, actually. But yeah, I think it's in our society a term that is associated with negative things still.
Stef, do you like power?
I wanted to ask what is power, right? So I fully agree with you. It's a responsibility, and it's what I do myself, because for example, if there's something coming from the organization, I have to tell my team, and I know the team will not like it, and I don't like it either. I'm trying to make it abstract, right? I'm trying to abstract myself from the message, so I'm not the one who's basically using her power in the org chart to tell my team, you have to do it that way. I just try to be transparent and take the team with me and tell them, look, this is something we have to do. There is a sense behind it, or a rationale behind it. This is X, Y, Z, whatever you can. I'm always trying to be as transparent as I can be as a leader. I mean, obviously there are borders to it and limitations to this transparency, but that's what I would expect from my leader, right? That he's taking me with him when I have to do anything that's probably not part of my job, or what I would probably not like. For example, filling Excel tables and stuff like that, right? Yeah.
But it's also part of the business culture and different cultures of companies. Coming from the States, I worked for Amazon at one point. It's very hierarchical, and it's very military-based, and even a lot of the business terms, war room, like these kind of things, come from military. And they actually recruit from military and put officers inside of the leadership positions within the company because they want to function in a certain way. I'm not saying it's the right way, but they want to function in a certain way. And then I've seen the dramatic opposite at other companies where they have this decision by consensus and there is no hierarchy and it's really flat and everybody gets in a room and, let's, roast marshmallows or something over a fire. And then I find with these two dramatic opposite ends, nothing gets done in either of these ends. So I guess my question is, what it really is the middle ground?
Relating back to this, who sits where in the office question, right? I mean, of course, in the end, I kind of used my power, telling the team, look, you sit here, you sit there. But you can do it in a nice way still. So you can give the opportunity to ask, is that fine for you? I had single conversations with each and every one, and then I informed the team, okay, this is the final plan. I mean, it takes a bit more time. At least for me, this is the nicer way and the more authentic way, instead of using the power and saying, you're sitting here, you're sitting there, live with it, or, yeah.
I love the concept of power, and one of my favorite authors on leadership is Brené Brown, and she writes about that a lot and our understanding of it. But I can also relate to your experience with Amazon. I think my first leadership professor, he was from the military. I mean, he wrote a great book, Courage to Lead, and I very much enjoyed it, but that was how we learned about leadership. That's so true, and hopefully this will change for the next generation. What do you experience right now in terms of the expectations of, let's say, Gen Z? How do they want to be led, and how do you manage these different generations in the workplace?
Who wants to start with that one?
I think it's a very interesting question. I think there is a difference in generations, but I personally don't overdo it, because I think there is parts in every generation, right, so I wouldn't just say Generation Z is like that and Y is like that. What we see if we go into research, we see that it's actually a tendency back to more security, right? More stability. I think also connected to the current situation we're in with COVID and also the economic situation that we're in. Nevertheless, there were like Generation Y. I'm Generation Y, for instance. Yes, I'm definitely more purpose-driven. I agree with that. But we also find that with other generations. So I think it's very context specific, right? To give you an example, we did a survey last year, I think, among our youngsters, and we compared that with an external survey, and it was totally different. Like, the topics of ESG were not so important as all the research suggests in our context, although ESG is a huge topic in RBI. So it very much is very much dependent on the context, the culture you're in, and yeah, and I think that's what we need to take into consideration. So even if there's a Generation Y candidate, might be very, very traditional, right? So it's very individual and dependent on what you're looking for. So that would be my answer to that question.
I would agree with you. I mean, everybody's individual in what they want, but I do see a split in the generations where I would say my parents' generation, for example, it's work, 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 30 years at a company, you get the watch or whatever, thing that you get. And then we got into this, more work-life balance. And then we have, with the younger generations, they really want this sense of purpose. They want to know that they're giving back. That's very important, but I have to say that I really struggle with balancing that and the production and getting the work done. And I don't think, yes, you know what I'm saying? I don't think that there's an answer yet, but there has to be some kind of middle ground. Because at the end of the day, a company, if you work for a for-profit company, they're in existence to be for-profit, and that profit employs people. And so if it goes too far to one side, then the company will not exist. But I do understand you want all the things, the work-life balance, the giving back. So how do we marry these things? I don't think society is at a point where we've solved that yet.
We say always no profit, no purpose, right?
Oh, I haven't heard that one. Interesting, gotta say. Curious to see what our Gen Z team members say to that. What's your definition of success?
I would say it's about what you've had to, in my view, what you've had to overcome to get somewhere. It's not the person who's achieved the most. You see a lot of celebrities, sports people, everybody in the news and the media, and some of them will talk about how depressed they are and how unsuccessful they feel. But if you see somebody that, let's say, has a disability or whatever it might be, and they've gone for that achievement, they've overcome so much. So to me, it's what you've had to overcome, and you get that sense of fulfillment versus somebody that just, hits the mark all the time.
Well, interesting. For me, success is, I think, more components. One is impact. So I'm very much driven by impact. So the other thing is positive relationships. So it's with whom can I work, with whom am I around it? Is it people that I enjoy working with and want to be with? And then also for me personally, I felt success when I had the feeling that I'm heard, that people listen to me, that they trust me. That is very important for me personally. And I think the fourth component is still financial security in a certain way. For some, also financial achievements. And I think it's also something we as women are struggling to talk about. But I think it's also something, and I can speak about me personally. For me, it was for sure something that was also important to be equal. And that was maybe not the best motivation, but it's still in me, right? That I want to be equal to man when it comes also to the financial part.
I'm quite performance and impact driven. So to me, success really means first, it's a classic, right? I can measure my results. That's an easy one if you're in sales. But also I want to create impact, and that for me would mean that the Austrian team is not only performing, but obviously happy to work within the surrounding, giving positive feedback, and also being a sounding board within the company, but also within the market. So that's something that really drives me, next to what you just said, because being equal, to me, it's not really the financial thing, but being heard within an organization just as equally as every male colleague on the same level. And that has been a struggle in the past. So in these terms, being with Visa now, I can define it for myself. I was successful, but I've been struggling with that in the past many, many times.
Thank you for being so honest. To me, you're all successful, and I could talk for hours with you, but I want to give the chance to our audience, our participants right now, to ask questions. I see some popping up here on my tablet, so feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A section or in the chat, and I will ask our lovely ladies here. I see the question of, how can we turn these HR-led company values to be manager-driven? Question for HR?
Yeah, I can speak about my last week's experience. I was with 24 top managers, including our board, 2 days in a workshop, and we just discussed about our values and how we live them today and what we need to change to live them more tomorrow, and had really amazing discussions. And yeah, we need to put it on the board agenda, otherwise it stays an HR topic.
I think you really need to walk the talk, right? If you agree as a management team, including HR, obviously HR-led in main cases, if you agree on leadership principles, you should really have an eye on how they are lived. And if someone is not living them, I mean, you have to give some time, right? Because to some people they might be new or not that easy to adapt. But then you probably need a coach or a mediator. There are so many options to help people, but in the end, walk the talk. And if your leaders are not living your leadership principles, we're again talking lip services, right? And that doesn't help anyone. And you're losing credibility towards your employees, and that's the worst thing you can do as an employer.
I would agree with you, Stef. I mean, really, walking the talk. And so many companies these days put the leadership values on the walls and the computer screens and, it's there, so the values are there and the values are set. I think the best example is if you go into an office, or let's say you've started a new role in your first 3 months, and nobody told you what the values were, and they said, okay, tell me what you think the values are. Because this person did that, because I saw that in the meeting, because my leader did this, that's really the epitome of what the values are, and seeing it. So I agree with you absolutely.
What was the most difficult feedback you've received? Someone asks.
Not as a leader, but I was once told by my leader that I'm smiling too much. And that
Angeley, you can relate to that, huh?
Because I'm a friendly person and I can still, say no or stick to my opinion if I think I'm right. But I can do it while I'm smiling anyway. And I found this quite, unqualified feedback because I didn't know why I should stop smiling. And I found it, but that's something I guess women get to hear quite often because you're taken less seriously when you're smiling. And I think this is something we should work on and we should change because it doesn't have to do anything with competency if you're smiling or not.
So that feedback didn't really help you to grow, I guess. And that was...
No, I started smiling even more.
Okay, good.
Very good for you, Stef.
Any other feedback that was maybe valid but difficult to hear?
Yeah, I think that would be my example. I heard from one of my first managers that I'm very visionary and I have a lot of ideas and I didn't have the chance to execute them. So, and when I got the feedback until that time. So that was for me this first sign of, are you not trusting me that I can manage that? I can be visionary and good in execution. So I needed to prove that. I did, and then it was okay. But in that moment, I couldn't take it really. For me, it was like the way he said it, and it was meant in a good way indeed. He said, please share less of your ideas. And I was like, how come, right? Should I keep back and hold back ideas and proposals just to be impactful? It's now, I think, 10 years ago, and now I can see it in different eyes. And it's still something that is with me, that I sometimes need a translator. I do have that now in my team. So I'm very, very happy that I have team members who support me in translating it sometimes to others in what is it, what she wants and where she's talking about. But it took me really quite a while to accept that this is something that can be overwhelming to some colleagues.
For me, some years back, I had, it was a male leader tell me that you're just not ready. And when I asked him specifically, what did that mean? He just said to me, you've outproduced all of your projects, you're technically proficient, we like what you're doing, Leadership Rise, but I just don't feel that you're ready. And for me, it was, what does that mean? And then coincidentally, I saw that year at this particular company, all the men were promoted and all the women the same. So for me, it was hard because what do you say to something like that? What can you do? What can you show? And it makes you feel, very much kind of trapped in that space. So for me, it's hard because if you get something that is, you did this behavior, you said something, you handled the situation, you know what it is and you know how to fix it and how to address it. But feedback like that, what do you do?
Did you leave the company?
Yes, I did.
That's what you can do.
Exactly.
Speaking about influencing a situation or someone though in a positive way, let's say, one question that we have here is, what's the best way to influencing others when it comes to driving positive change? Any good examples you have?
What I would say, and one of my philosophies for leadership and driving change, is to understand people. And this, I know it sounds very simplistic, but a lot of leaders say, oh, if you just have this particular technique, if you just do this project and hit a particular goal or KPI, but understanding what's behind that and understanding what your teammates are struggling with. Some people may not like public speaking. Some people might be scared of something. Some people might have, the gamut of issues. And so really understanding that, to me, helps you drive positive change with that individual, because you're going a level deeper, and that is what will give them the best benefit for the rest of their careers, because they're never going to remember, the many projects, but they're going to remember how you worked with them to help them overcome, whatever issue that they may have.
Follow-up questions. How do you do that in a remote world of work or hybrid world of work?
A lot of video meetings, which I know is probably not the answer that people want to hear, but at the same time, you have to invest the time and the energy. And so this kind of goes back to when I was saying you have to really like people and want to understand people. And I'm a strong believer that you cannot lead people if you do not understand them. And vice versa, when you're talking to them, they get to understand you. A lot of disagreements, arguments, okay, oh no. A lot of disagreements and arguments and misunderstandings are because people don't understand each other. And so that's really the core issue. If they start to understand each other better, then a lot of these things are self-corrected and don't happen in the first place.
I also see it's two things. The one is indeed storytelling. So it needs a compelling change story. Why should I go there? And then it needs working on the personal concern, as I call it. So why does it really matter to me? And that needs, what I said before, the translation work. That needs also to know the people. What are the values? What they are striving for? And do that translation work between telling the story. And what I also learned is, I got once told that you need to tell the story minimum 7 times, and that's true. So they can really sink in. Yes. So when you're fed up with telling the story, the others start understanding it. And I think we underestimate the communication effort that is needed in times of change, yes.
We are coming to an end in terms of our Q&A session, and I mentioned before that we want to have good time management and showcase that as a key trait of leadership. So I just want to ask one last question, and I believe that Stef can join us now as well. All good? Hope you're well. All good, all good. Thanks for still joining. So in terms of all the books and podcasts we can read and listen to when it comes to the topic of leadership, we know that every year new ones come out, as you mentioned. Is there one favorite book or podcast that you have that really impacted your understanding of leadership?
I have a very different answer to this. I know it's a question people get asked all the time, the books. I think the best, there will always be, for example, I like The Alchemist, is a really great book because it's about self-discovery and self-learning. There are tons of business books that are wonderful. At the core for me, it's working on yourself and evolving yourself. To me, that is the best thing, better than any book, because if you evolve yourself, you will become a better leader. And if we talk about a book right now, 2 years, 3 years later, there will be a new book. There's always a different book, but I think the best leaders are the ones that focus on themselves and evolve themselves.
I always had role models I could relate to, and I still have. And you don't have to adapt their whole style, right? But maybe you have more than one role model, and you pick those attitudes, actions, mindsets that fit you best, right? And I'm sorry, I have to stop now.
All good.
I do have a book. I'm a big fan of 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It's really a book that can be read quite easily, and it's a nice story, and it's really good because it goes through what makes conscious leadership. And I do have a podcast as well, and it's called Role Models. And it exactly goes into female role models who are interviewed and telling their stories, and they do it in a very authentic way. And it's always about certain traits. So I wouldn't see a role model in being 100% the perfect person that I'm striving for to become, but more of there's a certain trait that you can observe. And we always say in leadership development that something that you admire with others is very often a hidden talent within yourself, right? So you can learn from that role model in more and more developing that trait within yourself.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'll look that podcast up because I don't know it actually. If we didn't cover all your questions in the Q&A session now, can our community members reach out to you in some way? How?
Of course.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
Okay, best to reach out on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for being here, despite your busy schedules, not feeling 100% well.
Sorry.
No, thank you so much. And we will go into a 10-minute break now, super short. Please be back at 3:10 because that's when the Solution Labs will start. So our Solution Labs are hosted by business leaders from different companies, and they will share a real leadership challenge that they were facing, and you will find solutions together and discuss it in a round. If you didn't manage to register for the Solution Lab, no worries, you can still join and watch and observe. Just be quick, please. And if you're looking for a new opportunity, we also have a lot of HR leaders joining today. You can connect with them directly in the networking area on Hopin, and you can also check out the leadership job openings that we have in the booth section on Hopin. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any learnings you want to share with us, feel free to share on socials and tag us, femalefactor.global. And we would love to see you stay with us and join the Solution Labs. Thanks for being with us. Have fun.